If you've spent any time online recently, you've probably seen the protocol, the dopamine detox. The idea that by locking your phone in a drawer, sitting in a dark room, and starving yourself of stimulation for a weekend, you can hit a reset button on your brain. But the brain doesn't store dopamine in a tank. You can't drain it, and you certainly can't fast it away. Harvard Health looked directly at this trend, and their conclusion is blunt. The premise is biochemically false. Your brain manufactures this neurotransmitter on demand based on what's right in front of you. The entire trend actually traces back to late 2019. A clinical professor at UCSF named Sepah published an article aimed at executive clients struggling with compulsive behaviors. He called it Dopamine Fasting 2.0. His protocol involved scheduling specific windows of abstinence to regain behavioral flexibility. In his own words, it was standard cognitive behavioral therapy paired with a clickbait title to grab the attention of a highly optimized tech crowd. He explicitly warned reporters not to take the title literally. The internet ignored that warning. Millions of people are now putting themselves through 48 hours of sensory deprivation because they misread a marketing metaphor as literal neurobiology. But if the science is wrong, why do so many people swear by it? If you've ever taken a weekend off from screens, you know that temporary sense of relief is very real. During those 2 days of disengagement, you probably sleep a bit more. You go for walks. You talk to your roommate. You finally read a book. What you are experiencing is the sudden return of basic, healthy behaviors that your phone was previously crowding out. It is an environmental change, not a neurochemical one. And the real test happens on Monday morning. The alarm buzzes on the nightstand at 6:55, and before your eyes are even open, your hand is already reaching for the screen. The reset didn't stick. Spending 2 days avoiding an object doesn't weaken the neural pathways that pull you toward it. The old habit is still perfectly intact, waiting to override that end. Popular psychology gets dopamine backward. It is not the chemical that makes you feel good. It is the chemical that makes you want things. Your brain actually runs on 2 separate systems. Wanting is the powerful anticipatory pull that forces you to act. Liking is the actual pleasure you register when you finally get the reward. The kicker is that these 2 circuits can operate entirely independently. If you've ever finished a 40-minute scroll session and felt worse than when you started, you've experienced this. Your wanting circuit pulled you in and kept you scrolling, while your liking circuit barely registered the experience. Decades of clinical experiments back this up. When researchers block dopamine signaling in lab rats, the rats still show all the facial signs of enjoying a sugar reward if it's placed in their mouths, but they won't press a lever to get it. The pleasure remains perfectly intact, but the motivation to work for it drops to 0. When you feel uncontrollably pulled toward your apps, your pleasure response isn't worn out. You are dealing with a highly trained, deeply reinforced wanting circuit that is doing its job flawlessly. That wanting circuit doesn't fire randomly. It has been meticulously trained over months and years to activate whenever it recognizes specific physical cues in your daily environment. When you sit in a dark room for a weekend detox, all you're doing is temporarily hiding those cues. Naturally, the desire calms down, but removing a trigger doesn't erase the brain's expectation. When you walk back into your normal routine on Monday, those old cues are waiting. You sit in the exact same chair, at the exact same time of day, and within minutes, the wanting fires right back up. You cannot fix a hardwired behavioral loop with a short burst of extreme isolation. Trying to white-knuckle your way through abstinence only leads to fatigue and inevitable relapse. Behavior science offers a much less dramatic, much more effective approach. To weaken the pull of dopamine, you have to stay in your normal environment, hit your normal cue, and intentionally choose a completely different physical action. Clinically backed strategies focus on editing the environment before an urge can even surface. This is stimulus control. You might mute your notifications, charge the phone in a different room, or change the screen to grayscale to reduce its visual draw. A second approach focuses on the moment of the urge itself through a competing response. Instead of fighting the urge with pure resistance, you reroute what your hands are doing. If sitting on the couch is a trigger for doom scrolling, you keep a stress ball or a Rubik's Cube on the cushion and grab it the moment the impulse strikes. For long-term sustainability, concrete reduction goals replace the absolute nature of a detox. Aiming to cut your screen time by a specific percentage creates a measurable target. This allows for a sustainable slope of progress rather than the binary of a high failure cliff. Neuroplasticity responds to this consistent physical redirection. The repeated act of facing a cue and choosing a different action eventually signals the brain to stop its old predictions and weaken the dopamine-reinforced link. You can start running this template tomorrow. On days 1 and 2, pick just one problematic behavior. Keep a list of every time it happens and write down exactly what you were doing right before the urge hit. That's your cue list. On day 3, identify the strongest cue on that list and physically edit the environment around it. Move the chair, unplug the charger, change the location. For days 4 through 6, install your competing physical response. Every single time that specific cue fires, you execute the new action. The first few times will feel ridiculous. By the 9th time, the new movement starts to feel automatic. On day 7, look at your baseline and set a specific, measurable reduction target for the following week. Then you run the exact same template again. Behavioral change is a byproduct of these unglamorous daily interruptions. Identifying the triggers and choosing a new response dismantles the chains that